It's just after Saturday midnight in the dense pitch darkness of Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk, and this is the perimeter fence of the old US Air Base. A line of cars is parked with Primus stoves cooking up cups of hot soup, as a dozen or so sky watchers are out looking for UFOs and alien visitors. They do this 3 or 4 times a week. To believers, this place is the equivalent of Canterbury Cathedral or Stonehenge. During the Cold War, 3,500 Americans were stationed at Bentwaters Woodbridge as an airborne strike force facing east. On Boxing Day 1980, bright lights appeared in the forest just outside the east gate. Security guards went to investigate and reported strange screaming noises as the unexplained lights moved off into an open field. One said he saw a metallic object hovering or on legs. It disappeared as the patrol approached. 2 nights later, the lights were back. The Deputy Base Commander, Colonel Charles Halt, led a small search party into the woods, armed with a Geiger counter, a night image intensifier, and a dictaphone.
Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees, plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like some of them came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter.
Step by step, Colonel Halt recorded their progress across forest and farmland.
148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmers' barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. There it is again. Watch, right ahead off my flash right there. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir.
The search party moved on, chasing the distant light, and eventually reached a clear vantage point.
0315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones in the north are moving, one's moving away from us. It's moving out fast. This one on the right's heading away too. Yeah, we're both heading north. Hey, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
News of the incident began to leak out almost immediately. The local UFO enthusiast Brenda Butler heard about it from an airman at the base.
He said there was an incident, and I said, well, what sort of incident? And he said, well, a craft came down. He said it crashed down in the forest, and I thought he was joking. I didn't take a lot of notice of him at the time, and he insisted that he was telling the truth. And eventually I did believe him because he was really serious. And not long after that, another security guard, he came and told me there was an incident down here and a craft had landed. And after that we began interviewing people all around the villages and that.
Brenda Butler and another UFO investigator tried to find out more. They went to see the British liaison officer at the base, who wouldn't confirm or deny that something had happened. When Brenda Butler later spoke to the American Colonel Halt, she became convinced that his searchers had a genuine UFO sighting.
I definitely do think that there was something happened here. Whether they saw extraterrestrials, I don't know, but Colonel Halt says that they saw something that is too horrendous to describe.
Did he give you any idea of what it was?
No, he didn't, because he said to make it public would scare people.
It's clear that on the night, the Americans took the sighting seriously. They contacted the Radar and Air Traffic Control Centre to check for contacts on their screens. Squadron Leader Derek Coombe was the senior officer on duty.
I remember phone calls coming through from the Bentwaters radar facility. There was an unexplained object they believed had landed in Rendlesham Forest, which they were investigating, and they thought that this might have come from space, and they therefore wished to verify whether there were any radar returns in the area.
And were there?
Nothing. They were very jumpy and quite panicky, as if to imply that there should be something, we should be seeing something.
Soon after the incident, Squadron Leader Donald Morland, the British liaison officer, heard at first hand what the American airman had seen.
Lieutenant Colonel Halt came over to my office and sat down and said, "Don, you're not going to believe this." And he told me all about these happenings and wanted to know what to do. Bearing in mind that I was fairly new on the base and didn't know whether they were pulling my leg or not, so I just asked him to put it all on paper and let me have it officially.
Half suspecting this was a Christmas party prank, Squadron Leader Morland was somewhat taken aback to get Colonel Halt's report, which he passed to the Ministry of Defence, where it was kept secret. Rumours began to fly about it, and a couple of years later it was released in the US under the Freedom of Information Act. It's heady reading. Colonel Halt says that a sun-like light was seen through the trees, it moved about and pulsed. At one point it appeared to throw off glowing particles. Later, he says, 3 star-like objects were noticed in the sky. They moved rapidly in sharp angular movements and displayed red, green and blue lights. When this report was picked up by the News of the World in October 1983, it became a sensation.
UFO lands in Suffolk, and that's official. About 200 military and civilian personnel witnessed the astonishing event.
Not quite 200, in fact, it was fewer than 20. Attempts to prise information out of Whitehall proved more difficult, fuelling suspicion of an official cover-up. It was only 2 years ago, after repeated requests from, among others, the social historian Dr. David Clarke of Sheffield University, that the MOD finally relented. Its file shows that checks were made of radar records and Geiger counter readings from the time of the incident. But nothing indicates to Dr. Clarke that the MOD discovered anything to make the incident itself significant. Their main fear was public reaction.
What really concerned the Ministry of Defence were people snooping around on the base, asking questions about UFOs. It seems as if there was nuclear weapons of some kind stored at RAF Woodbridge. This wasn't public knowledge at the time. And at this time, we got the concern about American nuclear weapons being based in Britain. And I think if the left had picked up upon this story about the Americans who were guarding nuclear weapons, crashing around in a forest in the middle of the night, chasing flying saucers, this could have turned into a huge scandal at the time.
Which leaves the question of what really happened in Rendlesham Forest at Christmas 1980. Officers from Suffolk Police who visited the area reported that the only light they could see was from the nearby Orford Lighthouse. After the News of the World splash, other papers plotted the route taken by Colonel Halt's search party from the supposed landing site, trying to show that they were merely seeing the lighthouse on their way through the woods. But a local resident, Robert McLean, a trained physicist, has tested this route and found it doesn't fit. In 2 years of research, though, Robert McLean has made a most important discovery, which we can reveal. This is an unlit, narrow country lane winding along the edge of Rendlesham Forest, about a quarter of a mile from the place people have assumed the search party emerged as they followed their UFO. If you come out of the forest here, Robert McLean has found, you can retrace Colonel Halt's movements on the tape exactly, and identify the real source of the lights.
Colonel Halt and his party came out of the forest and spilled out onto this road here. The lighthouse is in this direction there.
Over there.
You can't see it from here because oak wood is in the way. However, they weren't following the light from the Orford Ness Lighthouse. They were in fact following the light from a lightship called the Shipwash.
And where was that?
It was directly ahead.
And they could see that because it's to the right of the trees.
That's right. They could see the flash in the sky above the rise in the field here in front of us. But as they walked up this slope in this field, that light became brighter. They thought it was heading towards them. And then they saw something which was truly strange. A flashing light directly ahead, and then another light coming from within the forest, apparently. In fact, the Orford Ness Lighthouse was just cutting through a corner of the forest. The lights appeared to be synchronized in some way, and that's where the idea of the thing throwing off sparks came from.
Robert McLean offers a detailed, purely terrestrial explanation for most of Colonel Halt's sightings, but not quite all.
Colonel Halt says that a light appeared in the sky and moved towards them at high speed and shone down a pencil-thin beam of light that didn't spread out. That can't be explained, except perhaps he was seeing someone shine a flashlight up into the sky, and he misinterpreted that as a light coming down.
It's tantalizing, this, isn't it? You've got a long way to explaining in purely terrestrial terms what Colonel Halt and his colleagues said they saw, but not quite all the way.
There's always one last bit to investigate, isn't there?
which suggests a long life to come for the story of the alien landing in Rendlesham Forest. Brenda Butler, out skywatching, believes that this part of Suffolk is especially rich in extraterrestrial visits. What do you think it is about this place that seems to attract this number of stories of sightings?
I think that there is a portal here. It's letting through everything else from other dimensions. We've seen several craft down here, UFOs. We've seen spinning discs, and we've seen several ETs. And we've seen ETs watching us through the bushes.
Have you had any communication with them?
Yes. In June 2000, they contacted me when I was walking up track 12, and I started talking this weird language, and I've been talking it to them ever since.
Look up Rendlesham on the internet and you'll be in for a busy evening. To Dr. David Clarke of Sheffield University, the vitality of belief in the story of the UFO ranks as a modern instance of myth-building, a groundwork of strange fact, supporting an elaborate edifice of wishful thinking.
It's almost like a case of the Blair Witch Project. Once they got into the forest, they started seeing things that otherwise they probably would have ignored. When you look behind all these UFO cases, this is what you find. Lots of straightforward misperceptions come together because people are actually looking for UFOs, they're wanting to see them, and mysterious lights and strange happenings that would otherwise not be relevant suddenly become relevant to the whole mythology.
David Clarke and his colleague Andy Roberts are systematically examining major moments in British UFO history to sort fact from fable.
We will take a case apart in the same way that a detective would do, almost like a cold case investigation, and we will go back to the original sources and the original witnesses and see if we can actually find out what happened.
If a physical event like a flying saucer was seen, landed or crashed, then someone would be aware of it and there would be a paper trail created. This could be government documents in the Public Record Office, it could be police files, it could be letters between investigators. And what we do is we go back, we find these reports, put them together with what the witnesses have said, and by doing so we come up with a jigsaw which is hopefully the whole picture of exactly